And we're off and underway. Here comes the chase behind. This is a good move now. Lining himself up to the sprint. Is he going to take the stage? Yes, he is!
Hello, welcome to the 2022 AJ Bell Tour of Britain at the end of one of the hottest, driest summers on record in the British Isles. But that would make things far too easy. Instead, here at the Glenshee Ski Centre, we've got truly epic Scottish conditions. The Grand Depart actually takes place from Aberdeen this year, exactly where it finished last year.
Pushing for the line. Can he be beaten? No, he can't. In front of huge crowds, Devon salutes the winner of stage 2, who's never known success like that. They can't let him get too much of a gap. There, brilliant. Moment of the tour so far. Alongside Alaphilippe, Van Aert over the line. Both of them on the ground. Both of them on the ground. Hayter takes the line, moves to the front. Ethan Hayter takes the win, takes the jersey. The top 3 during battle all the way to the line. Van Aert, it's inevitable. Lampard takes the win. De Koning Quickstep finally take victory. Hayter alongside Van Aert. Van Aert sprinting for the line. Van Aert wins.
We've got out of the wet conditions and come into the cafe here, the tea at the Shee, alongside quite a lot of the other Tour of Britain fans. And joining me once again is Scottish cycling legend, I think it's fair to say, Pippa, good to see you. What do you think about this year's race route as you go back down south from Aberdeen to the Isle of Wight?
So it's almost a reversal from last year. However, that change in tradition of starting with a fairly gentle run into a race, that's all been put aside, and we're having one of the most brutal days to open a stage race that you'll probably ever see. Yeah,
finishing here at the Glenshee ski station, which is actually one of the highest A roads in the whole of the United Kingdom. Looking at the races, it's kind of a sort of tale of two sides, really. We've got the young stars and some notable less young retirees as well.
Yeah, there's a constant renewal amongst the peloton. And so we have Alex Dowsett and Richie Porte who retire, and we have the arrival of riders of the age of Tom Pidcock. So we have Magnus Sheffield, Thomas Globe, notably to look to, and that's we don't often see that kind of renewal in action. But here it's going to be quite stark.
Yeah, it really will be. Really excited to see both the young and the less young competing on the British roads over the course of the next week. Let's hear from some of them right now.
They say there's something special about your home race, and certainly I've had success here. I mean, it's my 11th Tour of Britain, so veteran would, I think only Mark Cavendish, provided I finish this, only Mark Cavendish has done more. Different strategy this year. We have 2, possibly 3 guys who can win stages and GC, and I think with the omission of Jumbo and Quickstep here, it does, you can't argue that does blow the race a little more open wide.
It is a real Tour of Britain, it's we've got some good guys here like Magnus Sheffield, everyone knows Tom Pidcock. What's special about Tom Pidcock is, everybody wants to win a stage in the Tour, but then to do it in your first year and to do it on something like Alpe d'Huez, that's incredible. He's not a big guy, but he can hold his own against, guys like Sagan or Michael Matthews in a sprint. He's not afraid to punch on with those big boys.
Richie's first race with him, so yes, if he's saying good things about me, that's obviously made a good impression so far. Just trying to get over the disappointment of the mountain bike world now. But yeah, coming back here to the UK racing home roads, it's now that I've arrived, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful race. It's a nice area to ride, and for sure something special on the end of the season. A lot of fans outside on the road, but also like the landscape. It's super beautiful. It's something else than to Europe a little bit.
The Tour of Britain for British riders, or definitely the continental scene, is the biggest race of the year that we can do, and yeah, it's always the aim. So I think even away from doing what I did here last year, I think you're always pushing during the year to kind of make sure you make the final six, if you will. So I'd like to do something a little bit different this year, but yeah, I think there's a statistic out there as well that I've spent, I don't know how many days in the KOM jersey since back in 2019, so maybe we'll keep that rolling.
Pippa, it may be wet and windy outside, but as you said earlier, they're starting with a real bang, a brutal first stage. What's your prediction for how the race is going to go today?
I think we'll see a small group, because you're going to have to be hardy today. It's a really difficult terrain, and the weather adds to that. So I think we'll see those kind of Belgian, Flemish riders, that kind of classic vibe.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be between them.
Okay, what about someone like Pidcock? I mean, he's got the weight of the Ineos Grenadiers on his shoulders. He's got great riders like Richie Porte and Kwiatkowski racing for him. He's going to have to put on a show, isn't he, this early on?
I think we're all expecting him to show where he is today. Yeah. But if I was him, I would keep a little bit of reserve and let the others kind of take some of that responsibility.
Okay.
He definitely has a chance today, but I would expect somebody like Dylan Toombs, who's a bit more explosive in this kind of terrain, to be probably the main favourite. So he's changed teams, so there's that motivation to do well for where he's moved to Israel from Bahrain.
Got you.
So he comes with that extra motivation to prove himself and to kind of make a marker of it in his new team.
It's going to be fascinating to watch. Let's have a closer look now at today's stage.
The 2022 AJ Bell Tour of Britain Grand Depart leaves Old Aberdeen's cobbled streets before heading west towards the first sprint in Inverurie. The first KOM at Benaki Forest comes after 42 kilometres before the race heads on to the interestingly named Lord's Throat. It's then on to KOM3 at Suey Hill before the race heads through Alford and Sprint 2. After Sprint 3 at Ballater, the race concludes with the first ever opening day summit finish in modern race history, which takes place at Glenshee Ski Centre. Known as the Granite City, Aberdeen is steeped in history. With its cobbled streets, mature trees and 15th century fortified cathedral, helped to make it one of the most architecturally distinctive cities in Europe. Famous as a global energy hub, Aberdeen stands out for enterprise and innovation. It is also a cultural capital with a bold and eclectic events calendar. Sitting some 670 metres above sea level, Glenshee Ski Centre will provide a spectacular Tour of Britain stage finish setting like no other. The centre itself is the UK's largest snow sports area and sits on the most westerly edge of Aberdeenshire. Located within touching distance of the Queen's summer residence of Balmoral, riders will climb the 9 miles from Braemar to Glenshee and the stage finish.
After the glorious sunshine of the summer, it was rain and cloud that greeted the 108 riders from 18 teams on the start for the 2022 AJ Bell Tour of Britain. The beautiful Granite City on the east coast of Scotland had seen the champion crowned here last year. Despite the weather, the streets of Aberdeen were still lined with cycling fans in their anoraks and sheltering under their umbrellas. The riders too were similarly dressed, and it was pretty hard to tell who was who in the peloton. One man resplendent in white, however, was Alex Dowsett of Israel Premier Tech, competing in his 11th and final tour. Having left the city, the riders then headed along the North Sea coast before Mike Bennett dropped the flag at kilometre 0 and the racing was officially underway. 5 riders then managed to get away in the wind and rain before the first sprint at Inverurie. That came down to a 3-man sprint between Jacob Scott and Matt Teggart of With Sungod and ex-teammate Matt Gibson, now riding for Human Powered Health. It was Teggart who took the win and the first points in the sports break competition. The rain continued to come down though as the 5 rode further into Aberdeenshire. Welcome back to Stage 1 of the AJ Bell Tour of Britain. with the rain still teeming down, the five-man break now had a lead of over 3 minutes as they approached the first King of the Mountains climb at Banaki Forest. Bassett of Human Powered Health, who took the points at the top, and it was the American too who proved the strongest again at Lord's Throat 12 kilometres later. As we rejoin our commentators, the peloton is still being led by Team Ineos, and the climb of Suey Hill awaits. Over to David Miller and Ned Bolting.
So up they go now. Suey Hill, the penultimate climb. 1.2k, as I say, in length. The average gradient's 9%. It starts off relatively gentle, but kicks up, and there's a good 300-400 metres where it's in excess of 10%. So a real wall coming up. Stephen Bassett took the first climb of the day. Watch out for him. One of the two riders there in the colours of Human Powered Health. He's the taller of the two riders there, with the beard and moustache, just out of the saddle like they all are now, as Matthew Teggart from With Sun God leads them up this climb.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who wants this the most, because one of the reasons for being in this breakaway is to score these points, try and get the Mountains jersey. Of course, they've got the finish to go, but they won't just be thinking about today, they'll be thinking about the rest of the week, getting in breaks again, scoring more points. So we could see a bit of cat and mouse in this climb, which is probably the case because at the moment we can see the peloton, the gap's continuously coming down, but they might just be accelerating a bit behind in order to then slow down once they hit the climb, conserve energy.
Andre Amador still leading them down as they now approach the foot of the Suey Hill climb with Reto Hollenstein on his wheel. You can see Alex Dowsett there. He's taken off his his wet weather gear completely. Dowsett doesn't really feel the cold. 11 times he's taken on the Tour of Britain. He really deserve a medal for long service for that. Deserves a podium all of his own. Came very close, did Alex Dowsett, to winning the race. I'm trying to think. It was the year that Dylan van Baarle won it. I think in 2014, something like that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Alex Dowsett was within a stage of taking the victory. Was very disappointed to miss out. He's had a long and very successful career as Alex Dowsett, and like Richie Porte, it comes to an end here. You can see the peloton in the distance there, just approaching the foot of the climb, so they're almost within sight when the road straightens out now. As Matt Gibson sets the pace on the climb.
Yeah, the peloton really has accelerated there into the foot of this climb, taking about 20 seconds out in the last couple of Ks. That's almost solely been done by Amador.
Tom Pidcock has just slipped into fourth place in that line on the wheel of Magnus Sheffield's. Reto Hollenstein sitting in there, the interloper from the Israel Premier Tech team. There's Tom Pidcock, of whom a lot is expected in this race. Simple reason being that the last three winners in order of this bike race, Julien Alaphilippe, Mathieu van der Poel and Wout van Aert. And in many people's eyes, Tom Pidcock sits, for very good and obvious reasons, right in the same bracket of riders. He's a good deal younger than those other riders and making his way in terms of his Palmares. But he's such a talent, Pidcock, that it would be seemingly such a neat fit, such a logical progression if the next winner of the Tour of Britain were a certain Tom Pidcock. But it's a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and he's had a busy racing programme. But it'll be very interesting to see not just how today plays out, but how Tom Pidcock's race goes over the next 7 days thereafter.
Yeah, it really will, and I think that's the advantage of having a first stage like this with that complicated finish, because there's no hiding, and if he's good, he will try. And it's going to be interesting because we do know that it's essentially dual leadership with Magnus Sheffield. So the two of them, they will have that very strong team looking after both of them. And obviously Tom Pidcock, you'd expect to normally to be the better of the two on a finish like that. But at the same time, Magnus Sheffield, we've seen him do some pretty remarkable things this year.
There is Pidcock out of the saddle, wearing gloves. Michał Kwiatkowski just alongside him, Richie Porte as well there. Alex Dowsett very close to Richie Porte at the front of the peloton, the two retiring riders. Niels Pollitt in that German national champion's helmet, you can see there. Winner of a Tour de France stage last year from a massive solo breakaway. He's come straight, as have many of the Bora Hansgrohe riders, from racing the Deutschland Tour, which he won last year outright. The slightly shortened national tour of Germany, just 5 stages long it was this year. Martin Ulienstadt, the sprinter, the Norwegian sprinter, looking for help from the side of the road. One of his soigneurs hands over a bottle. And there's some very hardy souls have made their way to the top of the Sui Hill climb, including, I understand it, a selection of riders from one of the cycling clubs based around Aberdeen.
Amador continuing to do the lion's share of work, but they do seem to just be pacing this now. They ate into that time gap significantly in the approach to the climb. But I also do think at the front here they've slowed down slightly, playing the game for the points, which are so important, because I'm sure they're pragmatic about the fact that they'll likely be caught before the finish. So this is all the more important.
There's a big attack now, and it's coming from that man, Steve Bassett, right from the back as well. He allowed a wheel or two to open up, but he's being hunted down by Jake Scott. Jake Scott going after him. These two did battle over the first climb of the day, and he's got a job now to hold off the marauding Scott. Scott is a rider who doesn't know when he's beaten.
Oh, that's a long sprint.
It's a long climb as well. It's been hard work to the top of this climb, but look at that reaction from Bassett. Counter-attacking and getting back on terms. Jake Scott's going to have to settle for second place here. And Stephen Bassett, the man from Kentucky, or sorry, Knoxville, Tennessee, I should say, here in the Highlands of Scotland, is going to pick up maximum points. That's a further 6 points at the top of the Category 2 climb, which is the toughest categorised climb so far on today's course. The next climb is the finish line to Glenshee Ski Centre, and that's the first Cat 1 climb of the Tour of Britain. Scott there, the winner of the King of the Mountains jersey, knows he's in a battle for the jersey this year, and that was an impressive climb from Bassett. Big acceleration, was caught by Scott, and then had the strength to go again. Inside 500 metres to go to the sprint at Afford. 89.7k to go. So the first sprint of the day was taken by a Matthew Taggart of Northern Ireland, riding in the colours of With Sun God. He's the rider on the front of those two with the white helmets on. But it looks like Jake Scott has attacked off his wheel, and Taggart is going on the right-hand side. So it's all about the two With Sun God riders. Can they make it a 1-2 here? Gibson was caught out a little bit by that potentially. Off they go, and it looks like Scott is still on the front. Taggart coming past him. It would be logical if Taggart takes the maximum points of those two, and he does. So Matthew Taggart picks up a further 3 points at that sprint and 3 bonus seconds. And that makes him the leader on the road, the virtual GC leader as well, because of those bonus seconds. Hardy souls of Afford coming out in large numbers to the side of the road. First of all, to see the breakaway come through. There's Matt Gibson. He was second place at the first sprint, but I think he was beaten into third place at that sprint there.
The final sprint of the stage was in Ballata, and it was the same 3 riders going for the points, with Matthew Taggart again proving he was the fastest of the trio. As we rejoin the action, the peloton is bearing down on the breakaway as they head to Glenshee and the hilltop finish. So back to David and Ned.
Oh, nice crowds here to enjoy the passage, and some bagpipes as well. That's more like it. Sun playing on their faces, and all smiles as the race comes through. But effectively, the 5 riders in the breakaway have done less work than Hollenstein and Amador since the race got underway. So it's no surprise if this stays the same way, that they're actually winning that battle at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's they have had to do less work, and I think that's now telling. You can see that Amador and Hollenstein can't match it now. They have done a much higher workload than these 5 riders. Although these 5 riders did have the accelerations, the sprints they were doing, the mountain, the climb tops, and the intermediate sprints, but at the same time, they've had a relatively easier day than those 2 chasers at the front of the peloton.
That was Braemar that the race has just passed through, complete with bagpipes and crowds, etc. And on they go and out the other side of town. And you can see now that the climbing is beginning to get a little bit more serious ahead. That's the first proper section of incline as this road tips up all the way to the finish line now that they see. 1:24, the time gap coming down a little bit as things stand, and some land art laid out on that football pitch. So the riders from St Piran now moving up on the left-hand side of the road, and another continental team, Ribble Weltite, moving towards the front. Richie Port in conversation with one of their team.
Yeah, this chase is completely stalled now. So it's up to Ineos Grenadiers and Israel Premier Tech to decide whether they want to swap those riders out, or even whether Bora Hansgrohe want to come up and at least help the chase, if not take it over.
Yeah, they haven't contributed at all, Bora Hansgrohe, to this point.
Let's not forget, there is a headwind on the final climb, and that's going to be, perhaps that's something the chase is counting on behind. They know that it's going to feel like a brick wall for these 5 riders.
Yeah, the wind is very strong today. Kwiatkowski calling the shots behind. The road captain, Magnus Sheffield, looking very fresh on the wheel of Kwiatkowski. Then comes Omar Freile and Richie Port. No sign of Tom Pidcock towards the front. Still looking back. You can see him just...
Yeah, he's there.
He's on the left-hand side of the road, just sitting up on his bike now, taking his glasses off. I don't think Pidcock is going to be riding for the win today. He can't be in the right sort of shape and form, either mentally or physically.
Yeah, he's very conspicuous in his absence.
Yeah.
It's almost as if he's making a statement there,
yeah.
But he's not interested.
So instead, attention switches to this man, rider number 6 there, 20 years of age, Magnus Sheffield, an outstanding rider from the Ineos Grenadiers. It looks, for all the world, like he's going to be the focus of their aspirations here, and the reason why Amador is doing the job that he is. That's a grimace, not of pleasure, but of increasing pain. And there is Tom Pidcock. I think you're right, David, he's signalling it, saying this is not my intention today. I can't compete, I'm not going to, I'm out of the equation.
Although I'll only believe it when we see it at the end, because a rider of Pidcock's quality can easily just move up and do what he wants if he's on a good day.
We shall wait and see. 10 kilometres to the finish line now for the breakaway. Andre Amador. This has just been a huge performance from him. St Piran now moving up very, very visibly on the left-hand side of the road. And Pidcock still drifting around on the back.
Yeah, as you say, it's almost as if he is signalling. Just making sure everybody knows not to count on him.
That's interesting. Rasmus Tiller is at the front of the Uno X string of riders there. The Norwegian national champion. He's got a really fast finish, but he's obviously working as a domestique for Anders Skarseth, possibly, who is rider 116 at the back, or the rider in front of him even, Anton Scharmig, who's probably the best climber in the Uno X team. They're the team just coming down the middle of the race. Harry Tanfield, rider number 36, and Charlie Tanfield, both there for the Ribble Weltite team, the two most experienced riders in that outfit. Talking of experience, here's Jake Scott. Comes to life at this race, really made it his own over recent years, and he's at it again and still looking strong from the With Sun God team. Time gap is coming down just a little bit now. 1 minute and 18 seconds, but they're well inside the last 10 kilometres. And I think the graphic is just maybe a little bit out. I think they're closer to the finish line than that might suggest. And the St Piran team take it up on the front. Good on them. It's quite a thing to do, isn't it, in a race like this, to come up alongside this World Tour team, the Ineos Grenadiers, and actually show their colours like they're doing.
Or lack of colours.
Or lack of colours, yeah. The black of St Piran.
See that road now winding up through this valley. Gradient stays like this for another 5 kilometers before kicking up. It's those final 3 Ks where it's a proper climb.
Time gap's going out. They've added another 5 seconds to their advantage, and look at that gap on the road. When you see that shot, it really comes home, doesn't it? Quite what a job they've got to do now, the peloton, to bring this one back.
Yeah, they really do. And it's
getting critical now.
Some decisions going to have to be made relatively soon in order to reduce the risk. The closer this breakaway gets, the more enthused they'll be that there's actually a possibility they could make it, which a few kilometres ago would have seemed, well, about 40, 50 kilometres ago, you'd have said impossible when it was sitting at 1 minute 30 so far from the finish.
Well, the motivation here will be sky high if they've got the information that they should be getting about the situation behind them. They've got a chance. Perhaps nothing more than a chance, but it's a definite, tangible, viable chance at the moment. Could potentially be fantastic news for this man, Stephen Bassett. On the evidence of what we've seen at the KOM, the King of the Mountains Preems, Bassett is by far the best climber in this group.
Oh yeah, I mean, he dominated those climbs and he's been looking good all day. I mean, from what we saw from the images at the start, he was the one that launched the breakaway as well. So he is the man to watch.
A line of sheep there following the route of the peloton alongside them through the field. A great sight that is. These grazing lands carved into this very barren moorland hillside here. And the climbing begins in earnest in a few kilometres. As Israel Premier Tech, by the looks of it, David, have sent another rider up to the front. It might be Corbin Strong to do a bit of work on the front. Saw him close to the front last time. We had a slightly more close-up image from the helicopter. But he drops away now, and that can't still be Amador. It is Amador, isn't it? He's actually riding off the front and opening up a gap.
Well, that would normally indicate this is his final gasp.
Dowsett on his wheel. Yeah. How much longer, Andre Amador? Alex Dowsett is the rider there from the Israel Premier Tech team. Amador flicks his head now. I think he's done. Or is he going to get on the wheel of Dowsett? Yes, he is. I thought he was going to drop right back. But Amador isn't quite finished yet. Gets some help as Dowsett moves on to the front. And this could make a big difference. If Alex Dowsett does a big kilometre or so here, this could make a huge difference to the time gap.
Yeah, this will be Alex Dowsett. I mean, he's got 3 kilometres now, 4 kilometres to just give everything he's got.
Setting it up for his new team leader, Dylan Teuns, newly signed to the Israel Premier Tech team. 6.2 kilometres into this headwind they go. They've still got these 5 riders together. Bassett doing a turn on the front. Gap coming down a little bit now. Dowsett, fresh legs. Very specialised rider in race situations like this to do precisely this kind of job. Can empty the tank. Dowsett doesn't need to take it all the way to the line. And that is going to tilt things heavily back in favour of the peloton. Five kilometres to go. The time gap now under 1 minute. 57 seconds is all that these 5 riders have to cling on to there. It looks distant, but suddenly, with the added impetus of Israel Premier Tech's Alex Dowsett, the peloton is now back in control of this race. Just for a few kilometres, David, it did look a little bit like they'd lost control as Tom Pidcock loses contact with the back of the bunch. And just sitting on the wheel of the doctor's car rather ominously there.
Yeah, jersey completely undone. Yeah, he's not looking good there, Pidcock.
No, signs very bad. I mean, clearly out of sorts in terms of today's victory, and it doesn't bode well for his participation in the Tour of Britain. So 5K to go for the bunch. Dowsett now takes them through that marker as the Great Britain team move towards the front with Imanol Erviti, the veteran domestique from Movistar, matching them for pace on the left-hand side of the road, where Uno X and the Norwegian national champion Rasmus Tillas also finds himself.
54 seconds. It's not tumbling down. So I'm not sure Alex Dowsett can keep that up for much longer. Now it is Will Bostock now just sacrifice himself. Gibson, sorry.
Yep, doing a big job of work on the front, but he is clearly, in terms of the form of those 2 riders, the junior partner on today's showing, because Bassett is flying compared to him.
But look at that, the peloton's now just matching Dowsett. Dowsett can't do much more. Amador back on again.
Wow. Wow.
Oh,
It's Kwiatkowski, yeah. Kwiatkowski.
That would have been wow. Amador has now dropped back. So Kwiatkowski, they realise they're going to have to use Kwiatkowski up, so it looks like it's all for Sheffield, and perhaps even Fraley, who's now sitting on Sheffield's wheel.
Amador's still there, you know, David, sitting in 5th place.
Huh.
An amazing ride. So, Michał Kwiatkowski, as ever, taking control at the business end of the stage, with Alex Dowsett still there on his wheel. Former teammates, of course, back in the Team Sky days. Then Richie Port. After that, Magnus Sheffield, for whom all this effort is being invested, as Rasmus Tiller takes control on the left-hand side of the road. He's not going to be winning today, I don't think. He's setting things up, either for Anton Scharmig or for Anders Skarseth from the Uno X team, or indeed for one of their other junior riders. They are such a multi-talented, they're almost like a multi-tool kit, Uno X, when they approach races like this.
Kwiatkowski doing some damage there, 43 seconds. But you can see it's almost like a drag race now. And that is the effect of the headwind.
Kees Bol riding on the front for DSM. So they've got another rider in mind, apart from Kees Bol. He's setting things up now for DSM. Down the middle in that very familiar black kit at World Tour level.
Is that Pidcock moving back up? I think it might be Pidcock's moving back up, which is strange. I just thought I saw a...
Well, we'll keep our eye on that. That really would be extraordinary if that were the case. No sign of him towards the front there. We'll keep our eye out for the mysterious Tom Pidcock. The DSM now taking it up, and it might well be that their Australian climber, Chris Hamilton, is the rider that they've got in mind today. He's sitting in 4th place in that wheel of rider, line of riders from DSM on the front. 27 seconds now, 3.1 kilometres to go, and you can see round that sweeping right-handed bend how the road does start to kick up in terms of its gradient, and it's the wind as much as the gradient which is making this so hard for the breakaway now.
Yeah, it really is. It's the headwind now that's just destroying the chances of this breakaway. That peloton is just flat across the road with all the different teams leading out. Dowsett done.
Dowsett done. Good job of work, because he changed the entire dynamic of the race actually when he got on the front. At a point where the peloton was just starting to look as if it might have misjudged the strength of the breakaway, Alex Dowsett did a turn of a couple of kilometres on the front that changed the balance of power completely in this bike race at this point. But Jake Scott, is he going to attack? Jake Scott goes off the front, and the breakaway is starting to attack its constituent parts now. There's a reaction almost inevitably from Stephen Bassett of Human Powered Health, and Scott, it's a last throw of the dice for him.
Yeah, now you see it's this ride from DSM is stringing out the peloton. Those other teams can't match that pace that they're setting. Boda Hansgrohe realising GB still riding a fantastic race there, staying grouped together.
Yep.
Realising they have to move to the right-hand side soon, because it's like DSM are really controlling this.
Sam Watson down the middle there in the red, white and blue, indicating to his teammate Robert Donaldson there that they should go over to the right-hand side of the road. That's because of the wind that's affecting the race at the moment. 2 riders drop then, Matt Gibson and Matt Teggett. They're no longer at the front of the race. There comes the bunch, and 3 riders have a 16-second advantage. Bassett and Udienstad and Jake Scott, but they're going to be caught fairly soon, I think.
Yeah, Udienstad, who has ridden a wily race, wasn't doing much, wasn't getting mixed up in any of the other intermediate classifications, and that saved the energy he saved, he can use now.
But 2 riders caught.
OX riding very disciplined as well. Boda Hansgrohe is running out of riders there. There he goes, just 1 left there.
Well, that's something of a surprise, isn't it? There's an attack coming off the front of the peloton. It's one of the Movistar riders who has launched an attack into this headwind. Or is it Movistar Jersey? Or is
Trinity.
It's Trinity Racing.
So there's a Trinity Racing rider who's done a huge attack there. Really impressive. But it's a long way to go with his headwind and increasing gradient.
Trying to figure out who that might be.
It could set wheels in motion.
Big attack, and he's going to get across very quickly to the front of the race where Stephen Bassett is gritting his teeth.
Yeah, that's a big ride.
It's a massive ride. He's coming in so hard. I think he's going to try and just go straight through this group because they're tiring. Can't really afford to sit on the wheels. He's got to continue this attack.
Yeah, They're just going to jump on. He's got the fresh legs, DSM, but it's not provoking any counter-attacks from behind. Everyone knows that this headwind and the strength of the peloton is still there. It's still early to go, but it's a courageous move.
It is. And they get on his wheel, and they're sitting with him. 1.9 kilometres to go. It might even be a little bit less than that. A flick of the elbow now. That's the rider from Trinity. And it is Tom Gloag, the man who's on his way to Jumbo-Visma. So Tom Gloag, what a talent he is. Well, we saw him at the Tour of Britain last year, launching 2 up attacks repeatedly with Ben Healy. And he is a rider who does things determinedly his own way. But it was a big attack, and it's going to be snuffed out now as Richie Porte sets the pace on the front for the Ineos Grenadiers.
Yeah, Richie Porte. Now this is where it's going to get really tough. Sheffield's still looking good as well. Omar Freire sitting there. So they've got 2 cards to play in Omar Freire and Sheffield. Freire might be the rider they're riding for. He has got a sprint in situations like this.
He has indeed, but Connor Swift is still there, and he's got Sam Watson in front of him from Great Britain. Can't rule him out. And Jake Stewart as well. Those 3 riders, the 3 strongest riders from the Great Britain squad. That's Chris Hamilton, locked onto the wheel of his teammate there from DSM. So interesting mixture, David, of puncheurs and classic specialists and pure climbers like Chris Hamilton towards the front. But Sheffield is perfectly placed now on the wheels.
Yeah, they got Filippo Fiorelli there. Italian national champion sitting up there as well. GB in prime position there.
Fiorelli's a fast finisher. He's the rider in the purple of Bardiani CSF. Dylan Turns just around about alongside him, and Mason Holliman, Felix Großschartner from Bora Hansgrohe, the sole surviving member of that squad, anywhere near the front, which is very surprising. Rory Townsend as well, the Irish national champion, is still there.
Well, we know what Richie Porte can do. He can probably take this to about 300 metres to go, which is probably his plan. If he can, he's strung everything out. Everybody is now pegged in their position.
Yep, one long line. You predicted this, David. You said Richie Porte will probably do exactly this on this climb.
Yeah, this is where he's at his best. We've seen him do this over and over again throughout his career, either for himself or for his team. So Magnus Sheffield has one of the sport's great champions in his final race, setting him up.
And Freire on his wheel, starting to look like he's struggling a little bit. A little glimpse there of Matteo Jorgensen from the Movistar team. It's still a pretty complete bunch. It may be strung out towards the front, but there hasn't been a big detachment off the back.
No, there hasn't, and I think that's the headwinds as riders are now just peeling off. Some attrition more than anything at the back. But I think everyone else is, if you're in position on the wheel, you're okay at the moment. But Richie Porte's doing a huge ride when you consider the block headwind that he's riding into.
Look how comfortable Sam Watson looks, the British under-23 national champion, on the front of those that trio of GB riders, along with Connor Swift. Looking really good. There's another British rider involved here as well. It's Oscar Onley from Team DSM. He's setting it up for Chris Hamilton, and smaller of those 2 riders from DSM, just moving up alongside Omar Freire now and onto the wheel of Magnus Sheffield.
Well, this is going to be a risk for Magnus Sheffield and Omar Freire, because if Richie Porte does slow, they'll get swamped. And he is just starting to now. You can see that line out starting to regroup. It's starting to bunch up a bit. And so this is where Magnus Sheffield has to be really aware. And Omar Freire seems to be the rider they're riding for at the moment.
Dylan Turns has got Mike Woods on his wheel. And it's all getting a bit difficult now. So Magnus Sheffield turning domestique now, working for Omar Freire.
Yeah, and Magnus Sheffield, again, a super strong rider. But Omar Freire is really too far ahead. With this block headwind, he could get overrun if they start coming up. Rory Townsend there, looking good.
Yeah, one of the riders from Uno X, I think it's Johannesson from Uno X. Omar Freire now about to open up his sprint, just a couple of 100 metres to go. Here comes the sprint for the line. Sheffield now unleashing Omar Freire. Freire trying to get past. Freire, a powerful acceleration, 100 metres to go. Rory Townsend, the Irish national champion, in the mix. But here comes a big lunge from Mike Woods from the Israel Premier Tech team. It's going to be Woods at the line who takes the victory. Well, is it Woods?
It is actually Corbin Strong.
Corbin Strong, my mistake there. The New Zealander from the Israel Premier Tech team. What a victory for him that was.
Mike Woods just behind him, so he was there.
Well, it was all set up by Dylan Turns. Great teamwork from the Israel Premier Tech team, and they have sprung a huge surprise there. Corbin Strong takes victory, and Tom Pidcock from nowhere suddenly appeared in the mix at the finish line.
But what a sprint from Corbin Strong, and very easy to get him mixed up with Mike Woods there, because you would not expect to see Corbin Strong up there taking that sprint. And there you go, there's Pidcock in 5th or 6th place. Somehow he'd made it back up, but Corbin Strong coming round and just gets him on the line.
Well, that's a first victory at this level for Corbin Strong. Just 22 years of age, the man from New Zealand. A first ever win for Corbin Strong of Israel Premier Tech, ahead of Omar Freili of Team Ineos and Norwegian Anders Johansson in 3rd. The 22-year-old from New Zealand taking to the podium in Glenshee. Being stage 1, the GC was pretty much the same as the race result. Confirmation then that the pre-race favourite Tom Pidcock now 10 seconds down in 5th place. Corbin Strong back on the podium to take the first AJ Bell Red Leaders jersey. The New Zealander also collecting the blue Dodal points jersey for the win in Scotland. Stephen Bassett of Human Powered Health was the clear Skoda King of the Mountains winner on the day with 14 points on stage 1.
Pretty excited to be here. Glad the form is still going up in the second half of the season.
And that looked like quite a scrap you were having among the 5 of you in the break there.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. You know, the early points usually decide these kind of jerseys, so it's important to go full gas from the start pretty much.
The final jersey of the day going to Matt Teggart from With Sun God in the Sports Break Sprints competition.
So who knew at the start of the day, when it was such miserable weather, that we'd end up with such fireworks on the final climb? And props to this guy, Corbin Strong from Israel Premier Tech, for taking the win on the line. Corbin, fantastically well done. How did it feel to take the win?
Yeah, it was an awesome feeling actually. Just a big relief as well after having that trust from the team and having guys like Mike and Dylan and such an experienced team in Israel Premier Tech, and having the trust from them. Yeah, it was a huge relief to pull off the win. And
soon to retire Alex Dowsett up the road as well today, leading from the front too.
Yeah, he was awesome, and his pulls at the end really made a big difference, as well as Reto. He did an awesome job all day on the front. He was super strong, but yeah, massive thanks to those guys, especially Alex as well in the finish. He was super strong, and to have someone with such big experience and such big prestige here in Britain putting in an effort like that really motivates me for the finish.
Oh, he'll appreciate that. Not the best day then for Ineos Grenadiers in the end, Pip. And what happened to Tom Pidcock?
I think he decided to follow Dylan Towns and kind of got fused. At what moment did you guys decide that you were going to run with you for the sprint instead of Dylan?
Well, it was the sort of finish that could have gone a number of ways. Obviously, if it could have been super hard and it would have suited a guy like Dylan or Mike a bit better, but there was a headwind on the climb, which meant it'd probably be a bigger bunch. And I think, I'm not as strong up the hills as Dylan or Mike, but I can sprint pretty well. So we went in with a number of cards, and just massive thanks to the team for trusting me and giving me an opportunity with guys like Mike and Dylan, who are proven winners at this level, and to get my own chance to have a go. It's a massive privilege, and thanks to the team.
So that's stage 1 with a leader's jersey on your back. Tomorrow stage 2 is also in Scotland. Let's have a look now.
Stage 2 sees the racing take place entirely within the Scottish borders. Heading south out of Hawick, the Tour then heads northwest towards the first sprint at Moorbattle. It's then on towards the Coastfire Sprint 2 at Coldstream, and after a brief flirt with the coastline at Eyemouth, the race heads back inland to Reston for Sprint 2. Once again, the peloton will face 3 KOMs in quick succession, with the Cat 3 climbs at Wanside Rig, Mainslaughter Law and Hardens Hall. It's then just a short 6k race to the line on Newton Street in Duns.
So Corbin, big responsibility tomorrow. You've got to defend the leader's jersey here at the Tour of Britain. Reckon you can do it?
Yeah, I believe so. It's a really hard stage, and again, I think it would be really unpredictable, but I'm in a super privileged position to have such a strong and experienced team to help defend the lead. So we'll give it our best go, and we're confident we can hold on to the jersey.
Pippa, what are the other teams going to have to do tomorrow as they head towards Duns?
Ambush these guys. They've got no choice. Now they know how fast Corbin is. There's no choice but to try and sneak away, because obviously they're in good shape and the team's well structured. So, it's going to have to be an ambush somewhere out there.
It's going to be interesting. Pippa, thank you very much indeed. Corbin, thanks very much to you. Stay where you are for the time being, because tomorrow, stage 2, well, Proof today that today was one for the strong man. Can he hold on to it tomorrow? We will find out. Live coverage 10:45 in the morning here on ITV4 and highlights again in the evening. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.